One thing to me that makes this 2023 NFL draft coming up in a few weeks really exciting is not the fact that the Bears traded back from 1 to 9 and they've got a bunch of additional draft pick capital for this year and future years. There's a piece of the excitement there. But the real excitement comes in the fact that we have quarterbacks, keyword plural, quarterbacks, projected to be top picks in this year's draft. And not just that, some debate about which quarterback should be taken number 1 overall. No offense, but last year's draft, where the debate is around whether the Jaguars should take Trayvon Walker or Aiden Hutchinson, boring as shit. Tell me I'm wrong. 2021, you had pretty much a belief that the Jags were going to take Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. But then it's like, hey, where does Zach Wilson go? Where does Trey Lance go? Where does Justin Fields go? Where does Mac Jones go? So in the aggregate, it made that draft really interesting. 2020, same thing. Even though you had a pretty good sense early on in the draft process that Joe Burrow was going to go number 1 to 6 to Cincinnati, where's Tua going to end up? Where's Justin Herbert going to end up? Quarterbacks make the draft. They really do. That, to me, is like an almost undeniable fact. The most interesting drafts have some type of major quarterback subplot or storyline. And that brings us to the Carolina Panthers, who have the number 1 overall pick as of now in this year's NFL draft. And clearly, we know that you don't trade up from 9 to 1 in a draft like this and give up what the Carolina Panthers did. A second-round pick this year, along with pick 9 this year, a 2024 first and a 2025 second, plus DJ Moore. You don't give that up unless you're moving up to take a quarterback at number 1 overall. Period. So we know a quarterback's going number 1. We know, right behind them, Houston at number 2, a quarterback's going there. And then, whether Arizona trades down or not, we'll see. Assuming the Colts take a quarterback at 4, you got 4 quarterbacks that are being viewed and talked about as top of the draft prospects this year. It's CJ Stroud, it's Bryce Young, it's Will Levis, it's Anthony Richardson. Those are the 4 guys. Recently, you've seen a couple of people float out Hendon Hooker as a first-round pick. Yeah, I don't know where the hell that's coming from, but whatever. But you're the Carolina Panthers. You're sitting there at pick 1. And what do? In some ways, this is where you've almost put yourself into the worst spot, because sitting there at 1, yes, you could say you get the choice of whatever quarterback you want, but it also puts the most pressure on you because you have to make the first choice and then the other dominoes fall into place. And what happens if you get it wrong? Just saying. But at the end of the day, the Carolina Panthers control their own destiny at the quarterback position. And that means they can ultimately choose whatever quarterback they want for new head coach Frank Reich. And you'll see a lot of debate and conversation about who the Carolina Panthers should take. Is it C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young? Is it C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young? Is it Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud? Which one of these 2 established quarterbacks from big-name programs with multiple years of high-profile performances and high-profile games under their belt, which one of these 2 guys is going to end up being the face of the Carolina Panthers franchise? And I think that conversation is flawed and perhaps even totally ass off the mark. I really do. Because I'm sure this will annoy and aggravate Alabama fans, but you don't trade up like the Panthers just did to draft a massive outlier at the position in a 5'10 quarterback who, even more importantly, is barely 200 pounds with kind of middling arm talent. You don't trade up to number 1 overall for those types of guys, nor should you. To me, you are either trading up because you want the most NFL-ready pocket passer day one, or you want to swing for the fences with the guy with the highest upside. And in neither one of those instances is that Bryce Young in this draft. It's just not. So to me, the ultimate choice for the Panthers at pick 1 comes down to C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson. And you might look at me like I'm nuts, but let's say you feel that C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young are the two best pure pocket passers in this draft. Okay, fine. C.J. Stroud is a better pure pocket passer. Bryce Young's abilities, or his best comes when he's able to move, when he's able to improvise. As a pure pocket passer, though, C.J. Stroud is better. He is the most NFL-ready pocket passer, no hate, no anything else, in this draft. So, if you want to choose the more seasoned and experienced and pro-ready guy, it's C.J. Stroud. And if you want to swing for the fences and go for the home run, it's not Will Levis, his mayonnaise and coffee ass. It's Anthony Richardson. To me, that's the conversation. That's the debate. And personally, my opinion only, I think that's the internal debate that the Panthers have had with themselves internally over the past few weeks and may still continue to have up until, we get close to the draft at the end of the month. And that's the right conversation. Because if you look at C.J. Stroud, you say he's Jared Goff with a little bit better feet. Or he's Matt Ryan with much better feet. Well, you can win a lot of games with a quarterback like that. And there's a play there for the Panthers to say, hey, you bring in a C.J. Stroud onto this team with as boo-boo ass as that NFC South is going to be from the appearances in 2023. The Panthers with a rookie quarterback could win that division. Now, mind you, that might come with only 7 or 8 wins, but it is certainly possible. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Not likely, but possible. So there's an argument to be made that Stroud's the guy. Don't overthink it. Don't get cute. Say we're going to take the best pocket passer, the most NFL-ready, prototype type of size, very good arm. It's not an elite rocket launcher type of arm, but good enough, accurate, poised. It's C.J. Stroud. But for the Panthers, there's also that very big piece of learn from your history. And in 2011, in a draft that had 4 quarterbacks ultimately go in the top 12 picks, the Panthers took Cam Newton out of Auburn with the number 1 overall pick. Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, blah, blah, blah. But he ultimately only had 1 full season as a starter in the SEC. And while he was more accurate, certainly as a passer statistically, than Anthony Richardson when Cam was coming out of Auburn, I posed this question about a week or 2 ago on Twitter and said, hey, if Cam Newton is in this draft, where does he line up? Where do you take him? And without hesitation, most people said he's either QB1 or QB2 in this draft. Well, if Anthony Richardson is the closest thing we've seen to Cam Newton, outside of maybe Josh Allen in the past decade, which doesn't feel like an inaccurate statement, then Anthony Richardson should be either QB1 or QB2 in this draft. And if there's any organization that is well positioned, based off of their history, to be able to have a different type of quarterback, be the face of the franchise, it's the Carolina Panthers, because they did with the Cam Newton. And you can say, well, look at where Cam's at now. Yeah, now. But if you told anybody that you got almost a decade out of that position, which included multiple Pro Bowls, multiple 4,000-yard passing seasons, a league MVP, a conference championship, multiple division titles from that quarterback being drafted number 1 overall, would you take it? Almost unequivocally, yes, you would. I'm not here to sit there and tell you that Anthony Richardson doesn't have a high bust potential, because he certainly does. And the odds are that he will be a spectacular bust, right? But that's not a guarantee. His arm talent is special. His athleticism is special. His physical build is special. His overall upside is special. Yes, his accuracy needs work, but you can improve that. Josh Allen showed that coming out of Wyoming. And I see a parallel there. When Josh Allen was at Wyoming, the completion percentage was lower. But when you saw the translatable NFL throws and the way that he could make them, you said, nah, you could find a system where you'll get that completion percentage in a couple of years to 60, 65%. You'll deal with it because of the potential for the big special play. And Anthony Richardson can make that happen with his arm and his feet, right? And frankly, his poise in the pocket, specifically his ability to read the field, is underrated. It's not C.J. Stroud level, but it's underrated. Like, I'm sorry, you're looking at this, to me, if you're going to say, well, what about Will Levis? Well, what about the guy that has even greater physical upside than Anthony Richardson? To me, that's one choice. And the other choice, if you're going to say, well, go with the safer, more surefire thing, C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, I worry is Bryce Young pretty much close to what he can be, whereas Bryce Young is close to what he could be. C.J. Stroud still has some chance to develop. Still has, to me, a little more upside. I'm taking the more surefire thing, the non-statistical outlier. So I think the choice comes down to C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson at number 1 for the Panthers. I would be floored, I would be stunned if they did all of that to trade up for a 5'10", 200-pound quarterback with middling arm talent. Seriously. Like, that would feel like all-time stunning stupidity right there. But if you did it for C.J. Stroud, I get it. If you did it for Anthony Richardson, I certainly get it. And there might even be a bigger play. You already talk about this team has traded away DJ Moore. You're not going to have a first-round pick next year. You're not going to have a second-round pick in 2025, so your draft pick capital is a little bit limited now. You don't have a second-round pick this year. There might be an argument to say you swing for the fences with Anthony Richardson because you say in a year or two he might be ready and his greatness as a physical talent can overcome in the meantime some of the talent deficiencies around him on the offensive side of the ball. Whereas C.J. Stroud might have more trouble in the long term if the situation around him isn't great. That's not me saying that the Panthers should absolutely draft Anthony Richardson number 1 overall. I wish I could be that big and ballsy to say that. All I'm saying is that this choice needs to come down to C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson. And I want to hear from you, if you were the Carolina Panthers at pick 1, which of those 2 quarterbacks, and only those 2 quarterbacks, would you take at that spot in this draft?